Good evening, everyone. I'm Charlie Kyle, the principal of Innis College, and I welcome you to tonight's presentation of the Grizzlies. Before we begin, I will read the land acknowledgement. We wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River. Today, this meeting place is still the home of many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work and to celebrate on this land. So it's been a long time coming, but this event is finally here. And I say that because this is something we were planning probably for at least, I'd say about a year and a half. And I should say that the idea for this first came even considerably before that. I had not seen the film, and I think I'd just barely heard of it. And I was at a lunch with a friend of the college, whose name is Alison Fisher, and she had said, you know what you should be showing in Canadian Film Forum? This was completely unsolicited, by the way. And she said, The Grizzlies. It's the best film I've seen this year, and you need to show it. So I said, duly noted. So then we started working on it, and we got in touch with director Miranda de Pencier, who's one of our guests tonight, and we had it all set. And then, as you can imagine, the dreadful happened, which was COVID hit, and our plans, all the dates were set, etc., had to be scuttled, and so flash forward to now, and here we are. So this is, again, a delayed delight, but I'm so happy that it's finally come together. And it has allowed us to bring together not only Miranda, but also two of the producers on the film, Aletha Arnaquq-Baril and Stacey Algok MacDonald. And then, if that weren't enough, we also have as our moderator someone who you may remember if you were at our screening of Through Black Spruce. I'd like to say it was both the star of the film and also the star of the show, and that's Brandon Oakes. So I'm going to introduce Brandon and then have him take us to the next stage. So Brandon Oakes is a Canadian-US actor, a Mohawk from Aquasan. We joked beforehand that I would mess this up, and Brandon is now laughing at me because, of course, I've done just that. Akwesasne, which straddles the US-Canadian border. He started his career as a dancer. He has toured extensively throughout North America with several native and non-native dance companies. He then transitioned into acting, I would say rather spectacularly. He is most noted for his role in the film, the aforementioned Through Black Spruce, for which he received a Canadian Screen Award nomination for Best Actor in a Drama. He has also been nominated for a CSA for Best Supporting Actor in a Drama Series for Digstown, and you may have also seen him in Bad Blood and With an E, or another link to our little college, Decoys. We showed a couple of episodes of that, and Brandon features quite heavily and comically in that show. So we're really pleased to have Brandon here, and take it away, Brandon.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks for having me, and especially for this film. I was lucky enough to catch this one night on a flight back from one of the productions in the States, and they were playing it on Air Canada. And yeah, it rocked me. I was like the biggest, teariest guy on the plane. But yeah, that was my intro to it, and it had me from the first minute in. I was locked in. But I'd like to introduce the producers. We have Stacey Algok MacDonald, originally from Nunavut. Stacey is an Inuit filmmaker who currently lives in Iqaluit and runs her production company, Red Barrel Media, along with her partner, who we'll meet momentarily. Stacey is best known for producing Arnaquq-Baril, popular Inuktitut comedy series, which she played for 7 seasons on APTN. And before that, Stacey produced Throat Song, a winner of a Canadian Screen Award for Best Short Film. We also have Stacey's partner in Red Barrel Media is Aletha Arnaquq-Baril. She's an Inuit filmmaker from Iqaluit, Nunavut, and she also runs a production company since 2005, producing largely documentaries, but also animation and dramatic content. Alethea is best known for directing and producing the multi-award-winning documentary The Angry Inuk, about Inuit people coming up with ways to deal with the international seal hunting controversy, as well as an award-winning documentary, Tunit, retracing the lines of Inuit tattoos, in which he traveled across the Arctic to speak with elders about Inuit tattoo practices and the causes of their disappearance. I would love to see that. And last but not least, we have Miranda de Pencier, producer entertainment. Her producing credits include N with an E. I know it well. And she has won, which won 2018 and 2019 Canadian Screen Awards for Best Dramatic Series. And it currently streams on Netflix in 191 countries. And her feature films include Thanks for Sharing, starring Mark Ruffalo and Gwyneth Paltrow. Also Beginners with Ewan McGregor and Christopher Plummer, for which Plummer received an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. Oh, that's amazing. Miranda also made her first film directorial debut with the Grizzlies, which premiered at TIFF, for which Amanda was awarded the Directors Guild of Canada Award for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in a Feature Film. Amazing. Miranda.
Thanks, Brandon. So welcome. Welcome in these strange times. Thank you so much for making the effort to be with us tonight and to see the movie. I know we're sort of picking and choosing how to spend our time because it's fragile right now, and I really appreciate that everybody is here tonight to share this space, this strange, weird, new virtual space we spent a lot of time in to see this movie. I don't want to say a lot. I feel like you should just experience it, and then we'll all be back after to talk about our experience making it. But I do want to say that there was a lot of heart and blood, sweat, and tears and energy and love and humanity and Indigenous and non-Indigenous who came together to make this movie. It profoundly changed all of our lives who made it, and we were inspired by the true people that it's based on. So I think that's it. We're gonna stick around till after, and I'd just like to ask Alethea to come on to give you all a little trigger warning, and then we will look forward to seeing you afterwards for the Q&A.
Yeah. We just wanted to let everyone know that although the film was a really beautiful, uplifting, inspiring story, there are some difficult moments in the film. The film does discuss suicide as well as domestic violence. So, the huge reason we made the film was to talk about mental health and the importance of taking care of that. So, although we do promise if you watch through to the end, it's uplifting and beautiful. If you are struggling today, then you may want to just consider watching it on another day. But many people find the film actually really picks up their mood and watch it to cheer themselves up. So although there are some difficult moments, please hang through to the end. It's worth it. Enjoy the show.
See you after.
All right. Yeah, we have some questions from people who viewed this, and we had a few before. It's an epic film as far as I'm concerned. Like I said, the moment I saw it on the plane, and now I own it and I watch it once in a while. I had some friends over to watch it this week before they hadn't seen it. And I'm always kind of like, what? How can you fly in planes? You haven't seen it? Anyway. One of the questions we have, the first thing that comes to mind is what was it like trying to find the actors for the film? What were the challenges you kind of had? What was it like?
I mean, whoa! How do we talk about that process? It was super epic, and it became much more than just sort of casting the film, the experience of that. It's funny because I think, there hadn't been a lot of opportunity. There's still not enough opportunity for young Indigenous actors to get to perform. And so it was sort of like, you couldn't just call the casting director in New York or LA or Toronto and say, hey, find me the best top 5, 15-year-old Inuit actors. They didn't exist. And it's not because they aren't out there. It's just they hadn't been utilized and they hadn't been found yet. So so we had to kind of go to them. And we did. And the originally, we sent a casting director to about 5 communities. I went to another 5, and of course, these are all fly-in communities. And I was new to the Arctic. I'd know, you have to fly in. It's incredibly expensive, and some of the communities only have, let's say, 500 to 800 or 1,000 people, and so you're spending, $7,000 on each flight to kind of like fly in. So I remember like the first town I got to, we'd posted on Facebook and tried to do, drum up kids to show up. And I fly into this community and nobody came. And I was like, oh my God, I just spent all this money and like nobody's come to the audition and we're never gonna find any kids. And so then I was walking around town, no one's awake, and it was in the summer. And I was like, where is everyone? Why are they all asleep? And then someone was like, everyone's asleep. It's like, they were out hunting and it's like summer. So people sleep in the mornings. Like nobody wants to, there's no like daylight's 24 hours. So time is skewed. So finally someone said, well, you should go at the CBC radio opens up at noon. You should just walk down there and talk to the, talk to the CB. So I knock on this door at noon and go in. And this woman looks at me like, where have I come from? And she just basically turns the music off, turns the mic on and sticks at my face and says, okay. And I go, and I felt so lame. I was like, hi, my name's Miranda. I'm here from Los Angeles and you come on down to the Cynic Varick Hotel for an audition for a movie. Like it just was so horribly cheesy. But I made that announcement and then I was like, well, what do I do for a couple of hours? And hoping kids would show up. And they were like, oh, go to the, co-op, go whatever. So I just like went around town, like tried to collect kids basically. Like, I mean, I'm like, we're going to strangers.
How'd you hear about this story? Like, how'd you hear about the Grizzlies?
Oh, well, that's another story. Well, just to finish the casting. So anyway, the point is it was a crazy thing and kids finally showed up by the numbers. And in the end, we auditioned 600 kids all over the Arctic Circle. We flew 60 to the Eastern Arctic. We did a series of workshops and we found our cast. It was amazing. I knew nothing about the Arctic before coming up there, and I saw an ESPN news piece that was sent to me. That was really how it began. And I was really moved by the piece because I was interested in sports. Sports had really helped me. I suffered from depression in high school, and sports had helped me. So I was interested first as a sports idea of kids who are really transformed through sport, and then of course, I discovered a whole other part of my country in making it.
Oh, wild. There was a question that came up, and it came from someone who was watching the film, and they just didn't understand the disparity of the youth. They couldn't get a grip on how it was, and they didn't understand how the factors that lead to these suicides. Like, just on the break we had in between, I called my brother and his adopted Native brother up there, and they've lost someone every generation has killed themselves. It's like it's very common to them now. It's like sadly common, and I know it's very similar to where the North. Do you want to address that?
I feel like Stacey or Aletha should talk about that.
Yeah.
Our community.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to address in a nutshell, but it is a problem, obviously, and it's part of the reason we wanted to make this film is because, these issues exist in a lot of Indigenous communities, but this story is about one community that stood up and rose up, and the young people organized and kind of seized an opportunity and made the decision that they're allowed to still work towards something and have joy in their life, even though there's hardship. So that's why we felt this story was really important because it's a real life example of a community and a group of youth that changed their town. And Stacey's from there. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what that was like.
Yeah, I'm actually like lived my whole life in Kogluktuk, graduated from Kogluktuk High School. The Grizzlies didn't start until 2 years after I graduated, so I didn't get to partake in the program, but my two youngest siblings, one of them was an original Grizzly, were there right from the start. And I mean, the transformation of the high school experience compared to what I had growing up in high school compared to my younger sister was a completely different experience, because I think for the first time, school started to feel like a community, whereas for a long time, school was seen as something obtrusive, something that's taking away something from our own way of life, our own education, and there wasn't really an understanding of it, and also a lot of trauma with the whole concept of school and education because of residential schools. So what the Grizzlies kind of ended up doing was, by way of the youth leadership, was making the school feel like it was actually a part of the community for the first time. And that change affected everybody for the better.
I know it's hard. It's difficult content for some people to take, and it is triggering for people who've been through things like this. But I thought it was like really well portrayed the way you handled showing those tough situations. How's the community now? Is the Grizzlies still active, and how is the community?
Yeah, the Grizzlies started in the year 2000, the year I graduated from high school. It started, and it's still running today, 20 years later. And it started with lacrosse, but it expanded to all sorts of sports, from badminton. Kogluktuk are apparently the reigning champs in the Arctic for table tennis, of all things right now. Soccer, all the sports. And they even expanded to the elementary school. There's the Grizzlies Cubs program now that has been also running for over a decade, I think. So it's still active and still a source of great community pride. And yeah, so it's still going.
Right on. Someone had a question regarding the tattooing, because I know, and this is for Aletha, you did the film Tinuit, but she just wanted to ask about the representation of your tattoo, what it represented.
Yeah, we've been asked a few times if it has to do with loss or mourning, and it doesn't. We didn't foresee that being assumed. They're a rite of passage into womanhood. So the idea behind that was the character Spring, having lost her boyfriend, had to grow up too soon. So, through that trauma and loss of a loved one, she went from being a child to having to grow up really quickly. So that was the idea behind her getting tattooed there. So I'm glad you asked, because we don't want people thinking that tattoos are about suicide or death. It's the opposite. They're about celebrating life and adulthood and maturity.
Right. Yeah. What is the question? One of the questions is, what are the struggles that the Inuit residents currently face? But I think that's such a broad question. What is? I think they're trying to address what are the just currently with the struggle, the biggest struggles, and how it is with the suicide help prevention, and how they can help, and where donations can go.
I mean, it is a broad question. It's in a way it's hard to answer in one go, but it's also super simple in that it's colonialism and everything that came with it, all the trauma that it brought, the everything from residential schools to on federal day schools to the tuberculosis epidemic, the dog slaughter, where 20,000 of Inuit sled dogs were slaughtered over a decade to force Inuit off the land and into permanent settlements. Like you could go on and on. There are a lot of things that came with colonization. But today, you know, as we try to recover in the communities, we are really lacking in mental health supports. You know, addiction is common among people who have gone through trauma. We are the only jurisdiction in Canada that doesn't have a treatment center. So, you know, some of the most basic supports that people take for granted in urban areas or other provinces and territories just don't exist here. The kind of, because Nunavut was the last region to kind of join the country. I mean, there are definitely still large swaths of what we call Canada that are unceded territory, but Inuit are among the more recent peoples to willingly join the country, and you know, Canada did a lot of nation building, infrastructure building across these lands before we joined. So we kind of missed out on a lot of investment. And so we, you know, as a people are hoping that we'll, you know, because we've willingly joined this country with our land claims agreements and negotiated these agreements, that they'll be honored, just like the other treaties that are not being honored. And that we'll see the kind of nation building investments that other regions see. And right now, we are really seeing the need for mental health support, housing, and especially during COVID, our homeless shelters and violence shelters are really stretched to their limits. So those kinds of things need a lot of support.
Right. I see, like, I mean, as an this is about actors and the youth that you worked with. And for me as an actor, when I get to work or play, as we like to call it as actors, it's like sort of transformative. It helps you through hard times. And I know that a lot of these kids, this is their first time acting. You found some actors that are going to go on, that have gone on to do other things. How are they doing now? Do you still keep in touch with those actors, and do you still hope to work with them again? Because a lot of them I'd like to see again. Because I had the chance to meet the ones who got to come down for the CSAs, and they were all amazing.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, they become like family. You know, a lot of the kids when they come to Toronto just crash at my house, and yeah, it's become yeah, it's like family. I think that what was remarkable in the process was, as I said, we did these workshops, and really Aletha and Stacey, I have to thank them so much for sort of making sure that when we did those workshops, they weren't just about training actors. They were also about they were very human, and making sure that those kids had knowledge to take back to their communities that was beyond just performance. And so in that process, they learned throat singing and drum dancing and mask work and filmmaking and a whole bunch of other things. But it also meant that we all got to know each other really, really well. And I think by the end of those weeks, we were so bonded and so connected, and the kids were so open that it allowed that intimacy and that trust to exist. So that once we got to the set, we always thought of their mental health first. So it was really different than a normal film set. You're like, okay, take another one, let's move it on. If there was a sensitive scene and there was a kid who was a bit triggered, it needed time, the AD wants to keep going. And I'm like, no, like they need time. We're going to take a big break. And you just allow the kids to take the time they needed. But mostly, and pretty much across the board for the kids we hired, I think it was a really therapeutic experience for them. They all responded to the performing, and it was transformative. And I think in their lives now, they all say how much it changed them. And I think how much it helped them express things they didn't have in them. Anna Lamb said that she felt a lot of internalized racism before she did the movie. She didn't like herself, and she learned to love herself and appreciate herself as an Inuit woman through the experience. So it's been
yeah, she's in Trickster. She went on to do Trickster.
She went on to do Trickster. Yeah. She's incredibly talented. Yeah. But you know, and some of the kids like Jamie, who plays Vinny, hilariously. I mean, he was 16 when we had him in the film, and he's now a lawyer. And I mean, you know, these kids all are doing really cool things with their lives. So, yeah, they're amazing.
Do a lot of the and this is for the Stacey and Aletha. Do a lot of the youth tend to stay home, or is there a lot of generations that leave?
A lot of us stay.
Unmute.
Yeah.
A lot of us stay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Alim and I both went to school down south. We're back in the Arctic in Nunavut, and most of us tend to come back, although we do joke with each other every so often about let's move to Toronto.
I like Toronto to be my second home, not my first home. I love living here. It's, you know, it's a question we get asked a lot because I think Southerners are like, really, you want to live in the Arctic? But, you know, it's our community, it's our home, our families are here, the land is gorgeous, and when it's all you've known.
Hard to get our food down there.
Yeah, country food, the landscape, the families, and like, here, it's the population is mostly Inuit, and you go down south, and it's a real culture shock, and you just get really homesick. So you'd be surprised. And of course, there are populations of Inuit that live down south. Like I think there's over 1,000 Inuit in both Toronto and in Ottawa and Montreal, I think.
In Montreal.
So there are definitely Inuit down there, but most people who leave for school come home.
Yeah, that's where I noticed a lot of.
Oh shoot! You've frozen.
Is it frozen?
Am I frozen?
Oh, there you are.
You got frozen.
You unfroze.
Try it again.
We can hear you again.
Oh no! I'm losing my internet.
You're back. You're back. Oh, and now he's frozen again. Maybe while we wait for Brandon to come back, I saw a comment about the character Zach, and I just wanted to reassure everybody that, you know, that the film's based on a true story, and so many of the characters are real people. But we deliberately made Zach a fictional character because that would just be too hard to choose one person that's been lost, and it'd be hard on the family to portray them. So Zach is a fictional character who really could be any of our family or friends. His story's very familiar. And so, you know, poverty and family trauma pushing people into the criminal system and then feeling like they have no way out. That's a story that could be a lot of different people. But Zach's okay because he's not a real person, even though he is in a sense.
Back? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. This question is about the making of the film and the telling of the story, and you addressed some of it already, saying that it's you mean some of the characters fictional, but it is based on a true story, and it is. I think it's also as much as an Indigenous story as it is a non-Indigenous story because it involves the teacher. And I think they were trying to, the question was that I received was about what is it like to ethically tell an Indigenous story? And I kind of was like, that doesn't really apply to this because it's the two nations meeting. You mean the two, you know, he's there, he's the outsider, but he's bringing something that's healing. Do you want to take it from there?
I mean, I can definitely say I didn't know I was making an Indigenous story. There are obviously Indigenous characters in the film, um, and again, I didn't think of it when I started out making it that I wasn't aiming to make an Indigenous film, but I very quickly realized when I got to the Arctic for the first time that it didn't look like Toronto and the life that I knew, and it was a very different culture immediately. So I was super ignorant about the North. I tree planted in North Bay. That was about as far north as I'd been. So so I had a lot of learning to do, and luckily, and fortunately, I met Stacey and Alethea very early on, um, and they came on and really made sure that this story was being told properly. So it was a real collaboration, and every single draft they weighed in on, and we made sure that uh, the cast and the crew, and we had as many Indigenous people as possible working on it, and we also put a training component together so that there would be someone from the North training in every single department as well, to just create that environment. Even if people didn't quite have the skill set, we wanted to make sure that every department was penetrated, with that perspective. So I don't know if Stacey or Leith, you want to add to that, but.
Yeah, I think too, I'm just trying to organize my thoughts on this, but like, I mean, we've been working on this movie for 10 years by the time it actually got out into the world. Miranda even a little bit longer than that. And like the landscape and what was being talked about in terms of representation 10 years ago was very different than it is today. And we're so happy to be in this place where we're asking these kinds of questions. But on top of that, even still to this day, the filmmaking landscape and the hoops that we have to jump through to get diversity on screen is still a problem even to this day. And I'm always very thankful that I got to team up with Miranda and Alethea on this, because even with funding and with the funding landscape of media and film and television in Canada, it was so hard to get this movie made because of how many Indigenous unknown kids were going to be in it. It wasn't a big Hollywood story. And Miranda every single day never took no for an answer. So.
Awesome.
And over time, as our feedback came alive in the script, like the focus was more and more on the kids rather than the teacher. And so it was like funders want to see big name stars that are basically mostly white in the film, and we were like moving away and away and away from that and focusing more on the youth. So it was a hard sell, and thankfully, at the time, Miranda really didn't have to work as hard as she did to make us in our community part of not just being on screen, but part of making the film. And I'm so thankful that she was humble enough to go through that process, because it was humbling, I think, for all of us to collaborate across cultures from far away and only see each other occasionally, but working with each other constantly on it. And there are sometimes like real things, that misunderstandings that can happen that you have to work through, and you make mistakes on both sides, and it took a long time to get it right. But I think we did in the end. It feels right to us as the producing team, and then it was extremely rewarding when the film went out to our communities, because it toured to 42 communities across the north, small communities that don't have movie theaters. And the most rewarding feedback to hear from people was, yeah, that's how it is. This feels right. This feels true. And that was, their critical accolades as well, but that was some of the most rewarding feedback that we got, that it felt right and true.
I can say I'm so grateful it also took as long as it did. There were times that we wanted to throw in the towel, and it was a long time to get the script right, to raise the money, to be able to figure out how to shoot in the North. But because of that, we had time to, Stacey and I ended up making a short film. We had time to develop crew. We had time to develop cast. The script got better and better, and it really did move away from being, you know, Russ's story to the kid's story, and that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't taken the time. But we also, as we were making the film, Canada was starting to wake up. Like, as we were waking up, or I was waking up, so was the country. And I think words like, you know, reconciliation and decolonization didn't exist when we were starting to make this film 10 years ago. So the language has changed, and I can definitely tell you, there's no way I would imagine making a film with this much Indigenous content in it today. I mean, shouldn't be the director, you know? And I mean, even by the time we were making it, I was freaking out like the night before going, you guys, I should be directing this. And we were sort of in too deep, but absolutely, you know, Indigenous people should be telling their stories and directing their stories right now. And then actually, like, we're working on something, and now I'm supporting them. So I think, you know, there's been growth for all of us.
I'm curious, because when I work on projects and something comes up culturally that maybe something somebody had written in that wasn't kosher, let's say, wasn't good for, and I put in my 2 cents, and it changed the scene. Did that ever happen when you guys were filming?
We changed it up and through editing. There were things that were in the script that we were all comfortable with when we were shooting it, that by the time the world was moving so much, by the time we were sitting there editing going, this doesn't work anymore.
Right.
Yeah,
We also did
from
multiple
script writing to from writing the script to being on set, and then, oh, sorry, there was a delay. I didn't hear you, Stace. Go ahead.
I was saying we also did a number of test screenings in different communities. We test screened here in Iqaluit for a group of people of diverse backgrounds that we kind of sourced. We brought the movie to Qogloktok in its fine cut stage to do a very private screening for the original Grizzlies, the kids who really kind of inspired the story and have characters based off of them, so that they can also have a chance to process with us and ask questions and give their 2 cents before we went back into the editing room and finished it off. Yeah, I don't know. I think I forgot the question. Yeah. I might just be going off now.
And then at the end, like, you know, we looked at an edit and we're like, everything in it is right and true, but sometimes the balance of things when it comes across in an edit can feel off. And we realized, although everything is real and feels authentic, there was too much, like there wasn't enough of the rest of the community and joy and that kind of thing. So we went back and brought in some more of those pieces. So yeah, we definitely, as the Inuit cruisers, but also the community and the actors and the real Grizzlies had input into making it feel not just like it's true, but also that it is emotionally good, like that it's going to be going out in a good way.
Yeah, it was balanced. I felt you balanced it out quite well. I don't know, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I haven't looked at the question list at all.
I'm just going to pop in and be intrusive and ask a question myself, if that's okay, because I'm listening to this and loving it and thinking, I just want to hear some more. One of the things I'm interested in, I guess, is especially with you, Miranda, saying that things changed so fast as you were completing the film. Given that, how do you explain, not explain so much, but the afterlife of the film? I mean, this is a film that has definitely continued to have a lot of resonance, and people are still really invested in it. So can you speak a bit about that, about the impact? And then I'm just going to make one technical suggestion. Brandon, would you mind muting when you're not speaking? Because I think that's causing a bit of feedback with some of the other respondents. I'm going to do the same. I think I'll just help if only the person speaking has their mic on, it'll probably work better. So, but whoever wants to respond.
I mean, it's always, you know, when you spend so much time on something, I'm super grateful that it keeps being discovered. And I think the things which, you know, has been touched on tonight, but the fact that we did these screenings for so many smaller communities, and for kids that some of these communities don't even have movie theaters, for kids that haven't had access as they discover the film, to get to see, for young Indigenous kids to be able to see examples of themselves as the heroes of a film, as positive, you know, amazing kids who thrive at the end of this movie. That's there's a lot of kids who haven't seen representation of themselves. So I'm grateful that that's existing, and I think also for other people who from the South, and now as the film is getting discovered internationally, we've won awards in Italy, in Germany. We won the Palm Springs Audience Award. It keeps sort of finding audiences. We really, sadly, we're about to go out in the United States on 100 screens on March 22nd. Ha, ha, ha. So instead we had to hit VOD in September, but the numbers have been huge, actually. And that's exciting. So I think part of it is people getting to see a world they haven't seen before, but it's also an uplifting and hopeful movie, you know, and I think there's a lot of universality in it. So I'm glad that people find that. I'm also glad that people from the South get to learn about the North and get to see a community that's not like theirs, and that kids get to see themselves. So yeah, I'm grateful it keeps being found for that.
Yeah, and if I could just add that our Department of Education here in Nunavut is taking the film and building a curriculum around it, because the film touches on so many different areas like food security and domestic violence and mental health, all those kinds of things. So they're building a curriculum, and we're hoping that it goes into schools, not just in Nunavut, but hopefully across Canada as well. Because it's such a convenient entry point into conversations about all those issues. I saw a question pop up about resilience, and like, do people really give up that easily, kind of thing. And I just want to say, you know, there's a lot of historical trauma that goes into a person to bring them into that state, and so you know, having a curriculum built around the film allows conversations to happen, like to explain the factors that go into suicide, that a huge majority of the people who die by suicide have had childhood trauma, and then unresolved, untreated childhood trauma. And then when they become an adult or into their teens, there's some other extreme stress on top of that, and combined with the lack of coping skills that would have been taught by our communities if there wasn't such an interruption in the passing on of parental skills through the education system that kind of cut off ties between children and their parents through residential school and federal day schools. So everything's kind of queued up to have these risk factors, and then to eliminate the protective factors that you all would just take for granted, that were very deliberately interrupted for our communities. So it's not that the resiliency isn't there, it's that you know, there's a world of trauma that Canada doesn't know enough about. And so we really hope this film will continue to be used in schools to teach some of that history and open up those conversations, because it plays out, as you see, not just in mental health, but in the poverty in communities and domestic violence and all that kind of stuff.
I think that's so beautifully put, because I read that question and I was thinking, resilience is not about an individual, coming up with a way to forestall things that are happening to them. It's about how a network of support gets built. And then, as you say, when that gets interrupted or that gets torn apart, that's what we have to examine, and that's what we have to work on. I see that we're getting very close to being what's supposed to be the end time, but oftentimes what people like to hear is what people are working on now. So what your current or future projects are, and we'll include Brandon in that question since I'm asking the question. No one cares what I'm doing next, but we all want to know what you're doing next.
What are you doing next, Brandon?
Oh, you're muted, Brandon.
Okay, then I'm back. Quickly, we're doing another season of Digstown, which is coming up, and I'll be heading back to Nova Scotia in the spring. But tomorrow I leave for New York City. That's going to be crazy. I'm going there for 2 weeks.
Secret project?
New York City.
Is the project secret?
What?
What are you doing in New York?
Oh, I'm shooting I'm making a guest spot on a TV series. But the nerve-wrackingness of going actually to, New York City right now is, it's probably I've never felt like this about New York. I'm in question. My heart's not broken, but it's, I heart with a little crack in it. New York right now. But that's it. That's what I've got right now. How about you guys? What's going on?
Stacey, how much do you want to share?
There's a project we've been working on, the three of us, that we're developing right now. So it's, it's a new idea. We'll see. It's in development, and I've got a bunch of television, film, and development right now. So just working with amazing writers and talent, and that's really, it's just everything's in the gestation stage. It takes a long time to kind of get there, till it's ready to shoot.
Yep. A lot of our projects, same thing, in development. One documentary is almost good to go, but we're keeping busy, and hopefully soon you guys, the world will actually be able to see something. we're hoping the same thing.
So one of our projects we could mention is Slashback, and it managed to almost finish shooting right before COVID hit. And the last little bit of shooting was just wrapped up a week ago? No, 2 weeks ago now. And so that's in post-production, and that's probably the thing you'll see soonest from us, from our company. But it's an alien movie with Inuit youth.
A coming of age alien sci-fi with Inuk kids running around in the Arctic mountains. It's a fun one.
That's amazing.
Yeah, directed by Nyla Inuit, who is from Igloolik but lives in Toronto right now. So, and then there's a whole bunch of other stuff we're not quite ready to talk about yet.
We'll let you keep your trade secrets. So I hope that when the project you just referred to is in release, that you will bring it back to us. So we'd love to be able to show it as part of the Canadian Film Forum. And I'll just say one last thing that I'd seen the film before, but of course I knew as I was watching it, crying like a baby, just like Brandon on the plane. I thought, no, not the second time. That's not going to happen. And I was writing our advancement officer, and he said, yeah, my son's crying too. And I said, great, I've got the constitution of a 10-year-old. But at any rate.
We honestly, we spent 10 years crying when we were making it. Also laughing, but we don't stop, There's been a lot of years.
Anyway, I very much
appreciate. Very surprising people bawl their eyes out in front of us, so you're not alone.
Anyway, very much appreciate you all coming to join us for this screening, and for it finally coming together, and for Miranda, for you being persistent. And allowing this to take place, and Brandon for agreeing to be the moderator. And just thank you so much for your work, and continue doing this great work. And thanks to all of our attendees for coming. We appreciate your support. And as always, thanks to the Crack AV team that helps to put this event together, and helps us every time we do this. So we don't have another Canadian Film Forum event currently screened, but we have a bunch in the hopper. But I'm going to be like Miranda and company and say we can't tell you all the details just yet. But we do have our Innis Refugee Student Benefit Concert coming up on December 4th at 1:30. So if you're interested in that, please look for the registration information. We'd love to have you join us for that. So just one more huge thank you, and best of wishes to all of you for coming tonight. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Nicole,